It's not plugged in.
Hello. Welcome to Estefani,
Vanessa, Adriana's,
Caitlyn,
and Leah's podcast. One of the big questions on our mind is, why do people rebel? We think people rebel because they disagree with what's happening to them and to other people. They do it to help themselves and their families, and to attempt to make everything fair. They can also do it because they want to help other people because they know what's right and what's wrong.
The Virginia House of Burgesses was the first elected legislative body in British North America. The group of representatives met from 1619 until 1776. The first legislature anywhere in the English colonies in America was in Virginia. This was the House of Burgesses, and it first started on July 30th, 1619 at a church in Jamestown. Its first order of business was to set a minimum price for the sale of tobacco. Although the first session was cut short because of a case of malaria, the House of Burgesses soon became a symbol of representative government. The 22 members of the House of Burgesses were elected by the colony as a whole. The governor was originally decided by the Virginia colony and later by the Crown. The House of Burgesses, which met at first only once a year, could make laws. This continued to be the standard until 1624 when Virginia became a royal colony. During this time, England had more control of things in Virginia, restricting the powers of the House of Burgesses. Through the years leading up to the Revolutionary War, many leaders of the move toward independence made their name in the House of Burgesses. Patrick Henry introduced 7 resolutions against the Stamp Act there in 1765. The fact that the Burgesses could make their own laws was very much on the mind of many people in the American colonies, especially when Great Britain continued to pass harsh laws that the colonists viewed as taxation without representation. The Virginia House of Burgesses was important because it allowed citizens to vote directly on proposed laws, provided the first written constitution, and it established a representative form of government.
The French and Indian War was a war that lasted 7 years between Great Britain and France. This war began in 1754 to 1763. The conflict was made for territorial reasons in North America, but paying for the war caused it to lead up to the American Revolution. Both French and British wanted to expand their country and religion. By 1753, Great Britain had controlled all 13 colonies up to the Appalachian Mountains, but France stretched their colony from Louisiana to the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes of Canada. In 1764 and 1765, the French defeated George Washington. In 1756, the British had officially declared war, but things were different now because there was a new commander in America, Lord Loudon. He, as many as the others, was the same and didn't want to be allies with the British or the French. The war ended in 1763 when the British got Canada from France and Florida from Spain. The British gave away Louisiana to Spain. I believe that this is one of the main reasons that caused the American Revolutions, because without it, there would be no fighting about paying the money of the war.
The Boston Tea Party was a political protest by the Sons of Liberty on December 16, 1773. This protest was against taxation without representation through the Stamp Act, Sugar Act, and the Quartering Act in the colonies of England. The colonies realized that England was taking control of them, adding more money on stamps and taxes that had ever been imposed on before. One of the things that come to my mind was that America might have slaves, but everyone was becoming a slave for England, because England was taking control of everyone and making everybody a slave to them. The British were making the people in the colonies house the British soldiers, pay more money for stamps, and get raw materials from the colonists to send to England, where England sold it for more money. The Sons of Liberty told everyone what was going on, and how we can come together and revolt against the British and the acts the British were imposing. Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty went on board 3 ships in the Boston harbor and threw 342 chests of tea into the harbor. The Sons of Liberty also dressed up as Indians to hide their identity. It took 3 hours to dump all of the tea in the water. It held more than 90,000 pounds and cost over $1 million in today's money. After the Boston Tea Party, it helped more people rebel against the British. It led to the first active sparking of the American Revolution, which began in Massachusetts on April 19, 1775. Also, after the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Harbor was shut down until the 342 chests were paid for. This is called the Intolerable Act. The Intolerable Act made the colonists of Massachusetts pay for all the tea that had been thrown overboard the 3 ships. Without the Boston Tea Party, people would have never rebelled against the British. The Boston Tea Party helped people realize that the British were wrong, and how they need to get their rights and money back.
What exactly is the Gatsby Incident? First, you need to know the basics. Gatsby is a British customs boat that ran aground in Narragansett Bay, Rhode Island. It prevented smuggling and collected import taxes. In 1772, prominent men planned and then filed out to 10 boats and rowed out to the Gatsby and set fire to the boat. The men took over the ship and the crew and imprisoned them in Rhode Island. Historians believe that Joseph Buckland, who led the attack, was the first American and shot a leader as part of a planned attack. King George of England tried to find out who was involved in the attack. The English government was considering a trial in England, but nobody was arrested. Luckily, the citizens of Rhode Island were able to hide the identity of the attackers until the end of the Revolutionary War. Historians also believe that England wanting to bring the attackers to England for trial caused a united resistance, which later led to the forming of the First Continental Congress of the United States.
The king and the parliament were passing a series of laws called the Inalienable or Coercive Acts because of the famous French and Indian War. The colonists believed that the king and the parliament had fought the war to benefit England rather than the colonists. This act was a series of 5 acts: the Quartering Act, the Massachusetts Government Act, the Boston Port Act, the Administration of Justice Act, and the Quebec Act. These acts were passed in 1774. The Quartering Act required all colonists to house more British troops. Since this act occurred after the Boston Massacre, the British colonists feared the troops. It angered them that they would have to live a fearful life while housing the troops. The next act is called the Massachusetts Government Act. This act replaced the Council of Representatives elected by the colonists themselves with representatives elected by the king and the parliament. The king passed this act to limit Massachusetts' independence. The Administration of Justice Act, or the Murder Act, allowed British officials to get away with almost any crime. The colonists feared that the British officials could kill whole crowds of people without going to trial or jail. The most extreme act passed by the British government is the Boston Port Act. The king closed the Boston ports because of the childish behaviors of the Boston Tea Party. Many of the colonists had lost their jobs due to the closing of the port, and many began to worry that they might starve from lack of food. The final act passed was called the Quebec Act. This act was simply made to prevent any of the uprising or revolts by the colonists from spreading into Canada. In conclusion, the Inalienable Acts were the worst acts passed by the British government and the last straw for the British colonists. They hated the way that they were being treated by the Parliament and the King. They were sick of holding back their anger. They were ready to rebel. This is
Estefani,
Leah
Vanessa, Adriana,
And Caitlyn.
podcast. Thanks for listening.